So in this video I want to talk about how to add fractions. Now there's more than one way to add two fractions together, and the way that most people are first taught how to do this is by first multiplying the numerators and the denominators by some factor, so that they end up having the same denominator. And once they had the same denominator, then it was simply a case of adding. In this video I'd like to talk about a somewhat faster method when it comes to adding fractions together. It's actually pretty much the same thing as the whole common denominator method, but some students find the method I'm about to show you a little bit easier. At least it was easier for me when I did it. So I've got two fractions, a over b and c over d, and I want to add these two fractions together. So what I've done is I've color-coded these to make it easier to follow. So what I do is I take the numerator of the first fraction, in this case a, and I multiply that by the denominator of the second fraction. So we've got a times d. We cross-multiply, so a times d. And then we add that to the product of b and c. That's the denominator of the first fraction and the numerator of the second. So again, we cross-multiply and add them together. Then we simply divide that by the product of whatever's on the bottom, so the denominators of both the first and the second fraction. So that's b times d. This is much easier to see if we do an example, so let's do that. So let's try looking at how to add 1/4 or 1 over 4 plus 3 over 5. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the numerator of the first fraction and the denominator of the second. And according to my sort of formula up here, I've got to multiply these together. So 1 times 5. So 1 times 5. I've then got to add that to the denominator of the first fraction, that's 4, times the numerator of the second, that's 3. So that's 4 times 3. And finally, I just divide that by the product of whatever's on the bottom. So that's 4 times 5. And 4 times 5, like so. So what's that equal to? Well, 1 times 5 is just 5. And 4 times 3 is just 12. And we divide that by 4 times 5. And 4 times 5 is 20. 5 plus 12 is then 17. And we've got 20 on the bottom. And these two numbers have no common factor, so this is a fraction in its simplest form. So that's how we add 1/4 and 3/5. Let's look at another example. Let's look at 2/3 plus 1/2. So just as before, I'm going to take the top number of the first fraction and multiply that by the denominator of the second. So that's, in both cases, that's 2. So 2 times 2. Okay, and then to that I add the product of the denominator of the first, that's 3, and the numerator of the second. So you see I've got this nice sort of cross multiplication pattern. And 3 times 1 is just 3 times 1 on the top. And then I divide that by the product of the bottoms, and the bottoms in this case are 3 times 2. So I've got 3 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 2 is 6. On the top I've got 4 plus 3, which simplifies to 7, and on the denominator I've got 6. And 7 and 6 obviously have no common factors, so this is a fraction in its simplest form. So that's how I add two fractions together.